I was fearful that because of all of my brokenness and all of the things that I had done wrong in my life, I wouldn't be seen as a Christian in my community and amongst my friends and family. Growing up, my relationship with Jesus always felt really insecure just because I didn't know what it meant to be a Christian. I was from a community that really expected you to become a Christian, and so I just kind of became one at a really young age, but wasn't fully sure what it meant to follow Jesus. Instead, I kind of just did what I thought Christians were supposed to do and got involved in Bible studies, in a youth group, in church. But again, I didn't know what it was all for. I didn't know the purpose of following Jesus. I began to kind of have this false idea of what it looked like to be a Christian and to follow Jesus. I started thinking that your worth was found in being a part of church and being a part of Bible studies, and started seeing Christians as these perfect people who, fit all these specific criterias and, did no wrongs. And as I began to internalize that, I grew really insecure because that just wasn't true for my life. In reality, I was this broken person who had a lot of flaws, had a lot of weaknesses, had a lot of insecurities. And I was fearful that because of all of my brokenness and all of the things that I had done wrong in my life, I wouldn't be seen as a Christian in my community and amongst my friends and family. So, because of all these insecurities and that fear, I kind of just created a facade for myself and put on an act for the people around me to try and portray myself as this perfect person who was put together and, who knew all of the right things, knew what to say in certain situations. And so for a long time, even throughout high school, I lied about, being this perfect person, when in reality, I was struggling to understand just why I was following Jesus in the first place, and if I was even worthy of being called a Christian and a follower of Jesus. Throughout high school, that continued until eventually once I came to college, that started to change. And God began to change my heart and kind of show me more of the truth of what it means to follow Him. So coming to college, again, I was faced with that similar expectation of needing to get involved in a Bible study or a church group. And so that led me to getting involved in a life group through Cru, where I attended my first one and was suddenly just so in awe of the incredible women who were in that group, willingly sharing their struggles and their doubts and their insecurities as well, all the while rejoicing in how God was working in their lives still. And that was really cool because it was the first time that I was seeing these godly women just admitting their struggles and admitting that, their lives weren't perfect, but rejoicing and knowing that God was still working in their lives. And that wasn't something I'd heard before. It kind of redefined my idea of what it means to follow Jesus as I was seeing these women who were so clearly following Jesus, but also admitting their weaknesses and the parts of their lives that weren't perfect. And then the more I began to see that, the more I really feel that God began to change my heart and opened me up to not only, sharing more about my vulnerabilities to, this group of women, but also to God, to Himself. I think one verse that really kind of defines what I was experiencing during this time is 2 Corinthians 12:9, where God encourages us by saying that His power is made perfect in our weaknesses, and calls us to boast in our weaknesses because that's where His power dwells. And I feel like that verse just really sums up what I was experiencing because it really showed me that as Christians and as followers of Jesus, we're not called to be these perfect, put together people who know everything and who have all the right answers, but rather we're called to embrace our weaknesses and be filled by God's Holy Spirit and by God Himself in love. And it really just showed me that, God is so loving even despite our weaknesses, despite our flaws, and despite our insecurities. God sees all of our flaws, He sees all of our imperfections, and yet sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die for us anyway, so that we would know that we are fully loved and fully saved, that nothing we could do could ever separate us from the love of God. Since then, I definitely still struggle with a lot of the the same insecurities and still have a lot of those same desires to put up an act and put on a front for other people. But I make a conscious decision daily to surrender my front and to surrender my desire to perform for other people. And I give it up to God, knowing that I'm fully seen and loved by our Creator.